The air in Compton, California, crackled with tension as Sasha Broadus, the 16-year-old daughter of rap legend Calvin Broadus, better known as Snoop Dogg, stepped into the lion's den of Compton High. 3 weeks ago, she'd rolled into this concrete jungle with her dad, the newly minted police chief of the city, his badge still gleaming from the promotion. They'd bounced from town to town for his career, but this place was different, harder, meaner, unforgiving. Sasha felt it the second she crossed the graffiti-streaked threshold of the school. She was an outsider, a target in a world that chewed up newbies and spat them out. Her dad had warned her about kids like Trent Dawson, king of the halls, a swaggering tyrant who owned every locker, every stair, every soul in this rundown kingdom. She'd hoped to slip under his radar, just another face in the crowd, her backpack slung low as she dodged the chaos of the corridors. That fantasy shattered on day 3. Trent's eyes locked onto her like a predator sizing up prey, his smirk a blade slicing through the noise. Whispers trailed her, sharp, venomous, personal. His crew's laughter echoed like gunfire, marking her as the new kid who didn't belong. Sasha's gut twisted, but she squared her shoulders. She didn't know it yet, but Trent had just lit the fuse on a war he couldn't win. Because Chief Calvin Broadus didn't play when it came to his little girl. The halls of Compton High buzzed like a hive, ready to swarm, and Sasha Broadus felt the sting coming. 3 days in, and Trent Dawson had her in his crosshairs. The king of this asphalt empire didn't just walk. He strutted, his Letterman jacket a cape, his smirk a crown. Sasha had tried to play it cool, head down, earbuds in, weaving through the chaos of lockers and graffiti. She'd survived worse, new schools, new stairs. But Trent wasn't some small-town punk. He was a predator, and she was fresh meat. It started soft, a whisper slicing through the chatter as she passed. "Who's this chick thinks she is?" His crew, Liam, Kyle, Chase, snickered, their laughs bouncing off the walls like warning shots. Sasha kept moving, eyes on the floor, gripping her backpack straps tighter. She'd learned the game. Don't feed the beast, and it might lose interest. Trent wasn't that kind of animal. By Wednesday, the whispers turned to taunts, loud and sharp. "Yo, new girl, those kicks from the thrift store?" Trent's voice cut through English class. His lean frame slouched in his chair like a throne. Sasha scribbled notes, ignoring the heat creeping up her neck. He didn't stop. "What's that accent? You lost or just dumb?" The room snickered. Her pen shook. She'd promised herself she'd stay invisible, but Trent craved a reaction. He leaned forward, voice dripping venom. "Nobody wants you here, Broadus. Crawl back to whatever hole you came from." A folded note hit her desk. "Go home, freak." And her stomach twisted into knots. She didn't flinch, didn't look up, just tucked it away like a grenade she'd pull the pin on later. Mr. Holloway's "Trent, enough!" was a weak slap on the wrist. The teacher's glare faded fast, and Trent's grin only grew. Sasha exhaled slow, counting the seconds till the bell. She thought she could wait him out. She was wrong. Friday's cafeteria showdown was the spark. The air stank of burnt pizza and tension as Sasha sat alone, earbuds blasting, pretending the world didn't exist. Then Trent loomed, his shadow swallowing her table. "Always solo, huh? Guess nobody likes the smell of outsider." His crew chuckled, circling like hyenas. Sasha stared at her tray, fingers curling into fists under the table. "Maybe Compton's too good for you," he sneered, then flipped her tray in one swift move. Freezing milk splattered across the tiles, a white pool soaking her sneakers. The room froze, gasps, stifled laughs, all eyes on her. Trent towered, daring her to break. "Oops!" Her pulse hammered. Heat flooded her face. She stood slow, wiping her hands, locking eyes with him. "Move!" she said, voice low, lethal. Trent blinked. What was that spark in her glare? "Make me!" he shot back, stepping closer. The air crackled. The crowd held its breath. Then Miss Reese stormed in, heels clicking like gunfire. "What's this mess?" Trent played innocent, but Sasha stayed silent. She wasn't ready to snitch, not yet. She didn't know Trent was about to step on a landmine named Chief Calvin Broadus. Yo, this is getting wild, right? If Sasha's fires got you hyped, smash a 1 in the comments and hit subscribe. Let's ride this wave together, not vibin'. Drop a like anyway. I dare you to see if Trent's next move flips the script. Where you watching from? Holler at me. I'll shout you out when the real smoke hits. Can Sasha keep her cool, or will Trent push her over the edge? Next drop's gonna blow the roof off. Don't sleep on it. The cafeteria at Compton High was a pressure cooker ready to blow, and Friday's lunch hour was the detonator. The air hung heavy with the stench of grease and tension, voices clashing against the clang of trays. Sasha Broadus sat alone in her corner, earbuds drowning out the world, her untouched fries a shield against the stairs. She'd weathered Trent Dawson's taunts all week, his whispers, his notes, his smirks. But today felt different. The vibe was off, electric, like the calm before a street fight. She sensed him before she saw him. Trent's presence slithered through the crowd, his Letterman jacket a warning flag, his crew trailing like wolves on a leash. He stopped a few feet from her table, hands jammed in his pockets, that signature sneer twisting his face. Liam, Kyle, and Chase fanned out behind him, their eyes glinting with cruel anticipation. Sasha didn't look up, but her fingers tightened around her soda can, knuckles whitening. "You always this pathetic, Broadus?" Trent's voice sliced through her music, loud enough to turn heads. "Sitting here like some reject nobody wants?" She stayed still, staring at her tray, willing her pulse to slow. He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing her space. "Or maybe you just don't fit in, Compton, too soft, too weak." Kyle snickered. Liam cracked his knuckles. Sasha's jaw clenched, but she held her tongue. She'd survived worse than this punk. Then Trent moved, quick as a viper. His hand shot out, snatching her tray and flipping it with a flick of his wrist. The crash echoed like a gunshot. Fries exploded across the floor, milk splashed in a white arc, soaking her sneakers and pooling at her feet. The cafeteria went dead silent, every eye locked on the scene. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few kids stifled laughs. Trent stood tall, smirking like he'd just won a crown. "Oops," he drawled, daring her to snap. Sasha's chest burned, heat surging up her neck. She felt the weight of 100 stares, waiting, judging. Would she crumble? Would she run? Her hands balled into fists, nails digging into her palms. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed her chair back, the scrape of metal on tile cutting through the hush. She grabbed a napkin, wiped her hands with icy calm, and stood. Trent's smirk flickered. He hadn't expected that steel in her spine. "Move," she said, her voice low, a blade wrapped in velvet. The room held its breath. Trent tilted his head, amusement flashing in his eyes. "What was that?" he mocked, stepping closer, his breath hot with menace. "Move," she repeated, locking eyes with him, her gaze a live wire. His crew laughed, Liam's "she's got guts" dripping with sarcasm. But Trent's grin faltered just for a heartbeat. "Make me," he hissed, closing the gap until they were inches apart, his chest puffed, daring her to swing. Sasha's pulse thundered, adrenaline flooding her veins. She could smell his cheap cologne, feel the heat of his arrogance. Her fingers twitched. She wanted to wipe that smirk off his face, to show him she wasn't prey. But before she could act, a voice cracked through the tension like a whip. "What the hell's going on here?" Miss Reese, the assistant principal, stormed in, her heels stabbing the floor, eyes blazing. Trent stepped back, hands up, innocence plastered on his face. "Just an accident, ma'am." Sasha stayed silent, her heart still racing. Reese glared between them, the spilled mess a screaming accusation. "Clean it up," she snapped. But her eyes lingered on Sasha, doubt, suspicion. Trent smirked again, untouchable. Sasha knew this wasn't over. He'd just lit a fuse he couldn't snuff out. The silence in the Broadus house was suffocating when Sasha trudged through the door, her sneakers still crusted with dried milk from Trent's cafeteria ambush. She dropped her backpack with a dull thud, the weight of the day clinging to her like smoke. The Compton streets outside hummed with dusk's restless energy, but inside, it was a different kind of storm brewing. "Sasha, that you?" Calvin Broadus's voice rolled from the kitchen, deep and steady, cutting through the quiet like a blade. She froze mid-step, her breath catching. As Compton's new police chief, Snoop Dogg to the world, but Dad to her, he didn't miss a damn thing. His uniform hung crisp on his lean frame as he leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand, his graying temples catching the dim light. Those sharp brown eyes locked onto her before she could dodge them, reading her like an open case file. "You good?" he asked, voice low, probing. Sasha shrugged, sliding into a chair, her fingers tracing a gouge in the table. "Yeah." The lie tasted bitter. Calvin took a slow sip, never breaking his stare. "Try that again." She exhaled hard, shoulders slumping. He wasn't just her dad. He was a cop, a legend, and he'd smell bullshit from a mile away. "Some punk dumped my lunch on me," she muttered, eyes fixed on the wood. The words hung heavy, a live wire sparking between them. Calvin didn't flinch, but his grip on the mug tightened, knuckles whitening. Who? His tone was calm, too calm, like the hush before a raid. Sasha hesitated, her pulse kicking up. Naming Trent Dawson felt like tossing a match into gasoline. She'd seen what happened when you snitched. Retaliation, not justice. Doesn't matter, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Calvin's jaw ticked, his eyes darkening. It matters. She rubbed her hands together, frustration clawing at her chest. Trent Dawson, she finally spat, the name sour on her tongue. Something flashed in Calvin's gaze, recognition, cold and hard. You know him, she pressed, frowning. He let out a slow breath through his nose, drumming his fingers on the counter. I know his folks. Sasha scoffed, bitterness bubbling up. Figures. Of course, Trent's family had pull. Probably owned half the damn city. Calvin leaned forward, arms crossed, his badge glinting like a warning. School do anything? She shook her head, the memory of Miss Reese's week, clean it up, stinging fresh. Nothing. I said it was an accident. His frown deepened, sharp enough to cut glass. Why? Sasha's eyes snapped to his, anger flaring. Because if I told the truth, nothing would happen. Trent's untouchable. His dad's probably buddies with the principal or some shit. Calvin's silence was deafening, his stare boring into her soul. What's that say, Sasha? He asked, voice steady but loaded. When someone screws you over and gets away with it, what's that tell you? She didn't answer, her throat tight. He shook his head slow, stepping closer, his hand landing firm on her shoulder. You don't gotta take this solo, kid. Sasha swallowed hard, the lump in her chest threatening to crack. She wanted to believe him, but Compton didn't bend for girls like her. What she didn't see was the steel in Calvin's eyes. Trent Dawson had just kicked a hornet's nest, and Chief Broadus was coming for blood. Monday morning broke over Compton like a storm, ready to unleash hell, and Sasha Broadus felt the shift the second Calvin's squad car rolled to a stop outside Compton High. The air crackled with unease, the usual chaos of the schoolyard stuttering as Chief Calvin Broadus stepped out, his police uniform sharp as a blade, badge glinting under the sun. Sasha's stomach churned. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't wanted her dad to storm in like some avenging legend. But after last night's confession, she'd seen the fire in his eyes, the kind that didn't flicker out. Trent Dawson had crossed a line, and Calvin wasn't the type to let it slide. She climbed out of the car, backpack slung low, feeling every stare as whispers rippled through the crowd. Chief's here, someone muttered, and Sasha's pulse spiked. Inside, the hallways buzzed like a hive on edge. She barely reached her locker before the intercom crackled, summoning Principal Warren to the office. Then she saw him, Calvin, striding through the double doors, his presence a force that silenced the chatter. The office glass revealed the showdown. Warren sweating through his cheap suit, Miss Reese clutching a clipboard like a shield, and Trent's parents, Darren and Lauren Dawson, dripping with privilege, Darren's Rolex flashing, Lauren's designer scarf a smug banner. Trent slouched beside them, his smirk gone, replaced by a twitch of confusion. Sasha froze, her breath shallow, as Calvin's voice cut through the walls like gunfire. My daughter was humiliated in your cafeteria, and you let it happen. Warren stammered. Chief, we don't need to escalate. But Calvin shut him down, his tone ice cold. Escalate? Your staff watched and did nothing. Miss Reese tried. With respect, But Calvin's glare stopped her dead. No excuses. You pinned it on Sasha. Darren Dawson laughed, a sharp, arrogant bark. They're kids, Broadus. A misunderstanding. Calvin turned, slow and deliberate, his eyes locking on Darren like a predator. Your boy targeted her, humiliated her in front of everyone. That ain't no misunderstanding. Lauren sighed, theatrical and dismissive. Boys will be boys, Chief. Calvin didn't blink. That's the problem. Y'all raise them to think they're untouchable. The room tensed, a coiled spring ready to snap. Warren forced a smile, hands up. Let's find an agreement. No, Calvin cut in, steel in his voice. There's accountability. Trent shifted, ears red, as Lauren hissed, apologize. He muttered a sullen sorry to Sasha through the glass, avoiding her eyes. It was hollow, forced, but Calvin wasn't done. This ain't over, he told Warren. I want a report. Every incident you've buried. I'll dig it up myself if I have to. Darren's face darkened. You're picking the wrong fight, Chief. Calvin stepped closer, unflinching. So are you. Sasha watched, heart pounding as her father walked out, the office doors slamming behind him. Trent's crew scattered like roaches, and the halls buzzed with a new edge. Fear, respect, chaos. Calvin had just flipped the script, and Trent's throne was crumbling. But Sasha knew this was only the spark. Compton High was about to ignite. The fallout from Calvin's office. Showdown hit Compton High like a Molotov cocktail, and by lunch, the cafeteria was a war zone of whispers and glares. Sasha Broadus felt the shift. Eyes tracked her every move. But the sneers had morphed into something sharper, edgier. Trent Dawson's reign was cracking, and he knew it. His forced apology still burned in her ears, fake, brittle, spat out under his mom's glare. But it wasn't enough to save his crown. The halls had seen Chief Broadus's wrath, and Trent's crew couldn't unsee it either. Liam and Kyle kept their distance, heads low. But Trent? He wasn't wired to bow out. Sasha clocked it the second she stepped into the lunch line. His jaw tight, fists balled, that cocky smirk replaced by something raw, something dangerous. She grabbed a tray, the clatter of plastic barely audible over the pounding in her chest. Trent stormed in, shoving past kids like a bull off the leash. His Letterman jacket wrinkled from a morning of rage. He locked eyes with her and the air thickened, heavy with unfinished business. "Guess Daddy had to save your ass, huh?" he hissed, just loud enough for her to catch it, his voice a blade dipped in venom. Sasha froze, the cafeteria fading to a dull roar. She turned slow, meeting his stare, those hazel eyes blazing with humiliation, desperation. "What did you say?" she shot back, low and steady, a dare wrapped in steel. Trent stepped closer, his breath hot, his crew hovering like vultures sensing blood. "You heard me. Think you're hot shit now 'cause your cop pops flexed?" Sasha's pulse hammered, but this time, she didn't flinch. She squared up, chin high, the ghost of mashed potatoes still haunting her sneakers. "You're pissed," she said, voice cutting through his bravado. "You thought you'd skate by, like always, but now everyone's laughing at you." Trent's face flushed crimson, his sneer twisting into something feral. "Shut up," he snapped, closing the gap, towering over her. She didn't budge. "They don't fear you anymore, Trent. They pity you." His fists shook, veins popping, but she leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "You're done." For a split second, he faltered. Then he spun, slamming a fist into a tray stack, sending it crashing. The room gasped as he stormed out, his crew trailing, shell-shocked. Sasha exhaled, adrenaline buzzing. She'd flipped the script, and Trent's kingdom was ashes. Yo, this is straight fire, right? If Sasha's takedowns got you hyped, drop a 6 in the comments and smash subscribe. I'm bringing the heat. Not feeling it? Hit like anyway. Let's see if Trent's next play changes your mind. Where are you at watching this? Yell it out. I'll rep you when the chaos peaks. Can Trent claw his way back? Or is Sasha's reign just beginning? Next drop's gonna be a banger. Don't miss the smoke. Compton High was a powder keg after Trent Dawson's cafeteria implosion, and by Tuesday, the blast radius was undeniable. Sasha Broadus felt the ground shift beneath her feet as she walked the halls, her sneakers scuffing tiles still stained with the ghost of Friday's milk spill. The air crackled with a raw, restless energy. Whispers hissed like fuses, eyes darted like sparks. For weeks, she'd been the hunted, a shadow shrinking under Trent's reign, his taunts a noose around her neck. Now the tide had turned, and it hit her like a freight train. Kids who'd sneered at her back now parted like the Red Sea, their stares sharp with something new. Fear, curiosity, maybe even awe. A junior in a faded hoodie caught her eye by the gym, tipping his chin in a silent nod. A girl from Chem muttered, "Trent's finished," as she brushed past. Sasha's pulse roared, not from dread, but from a fire she hadn't known she carried. She'd toppled a king without throwing a punch, and Compton was taking notes. Trent, though, was a king in freefall, and it was brutal to watch. She spotted him at lunch, slumped against a wall near the quad, his Letterman jacket hanging off him like a shroud. Liam and Kyle trailed a step behind, their usual bravado gutted, heads bowed, hands shoved deep in pockets, like they'd forgotten how to stand tall. Trent's hazel eyes swept the crowd, wild and desperate, hunting for the allegiance he'd owned since freshman year. It was gone. A pack of sophomores by the vending machines turned their backs as he neared, their laughter slicing through his approach. A senior jock, some linebacker who'd slapped Trent's shoulder last week, walked right through him, shoulder brushing him aside like trash. Trent's fist slammed into a locker, the bang ringing out, but the crowd didn't flinch. His empire was ash, and the panic was eating him alive, his jaw tight, his breath shallow, a caged animal clawing at bars that weren't there anymore. Sasha felt the shift in every fiber of her being. In history class, when she answered a question, the room didn't snicker, it leaned in. At her locker, a kid she'd never met asked about her weekend. His tone real, not mocking. Trent's name still floated, hushed, sneered. But it wasn't a threat now. It was a warning of what happened when you fell. By fifth period, she saw him again, alone in the hall, his head ducked low, his steps heavy. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, his glare a furnace of rage and shame, hers steady, unflinching. He looked away first, a crack in his armor she'd never seen before. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She didn't have to. The power had flipped, and it wasn't loud. It was quiet, heavy, final. As the day bled into dusk, Sasha lingered by the school's rusted gates, the Compton skyline smoldering red. The buzz of the building faded behind her, but the weight of what she'd done didn't lift. It sank deeper, rooting her to the pavement. She wasn't the new girl anymore, not the outsider swallowing insults to survive. Trent had built his throne on fear, but she'd burned it down with nothing but her spine. The respect wasn't handed to her, it was carved out, claimed in the silence after the storm. She adjusted her backpack, the straps biting into her shoulders, and stepped into the fading light. Trent's reign was dead, and Sasha Broadus was the one who'd buried it. The Compton High parking lot simmered under the dying sun as Sasha Broadus climbed into Calvin's squad car, the door slamming shut like a gavel on Trent Dawson's reign. The engine growled to life, but the weight of the day clung to her, heavy and electric. She'd walked out of that school a different girl, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, no longer the shadow dodging Trent's venom. Calvin glanced at her, his police chief's badge catching the last rays, a smirk tugging at his lips. "How was school?" he asked, voice low, knowing. Sasha hesitated, then let a rare smile crack through the tension. "Not bad," he chuckled, pulling onto the cracked streets, the city's pulse thumping around them. "Told you, kid. Punks like Trent only got juice if you let him have it." The words landed hard, a truth she'd felt in her bones but hadn't named until now. The ride home was quiet, the kind of silence that buzzed with unspoken fire. Sasha stared out the window, Compton's neon and grit blurring past, her mind replaying the day, Trent's fall, the nods in the hall, the way her voice had steadied when she faced him down. Calvin broke the stillness, his tone shifting, serious now. "I didn't step in because I thought you were weak." She turned, frowning. "What?" He kept his eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel. "I did it because I knew you weren't. Just needed you to see it." The words hit like a punch, unraveling years of shrinking, hiding, surviving. Sasha's throat tightened, her hands clenching in her lap as the weight of it sank in. She'd spent so long feeling powerless. New towns, new schools, new bullies like Trent who thrived on her silence. She'd learned to disappear, to let the taunts roll off, thinking that was strength. But today, standing tall while Trent crumbled, she'd glimpsed something fiercer. Real power wasn't in fighting back with fists. It was in knowing she didn't have to. Calvin had lit the match, sure, storming in with his badge and steel, but Sasha had fanned the flames. She'd stripped Trent bare without a word, turned his kingdom to dust with nothing but her refusal to break. That was the lesson burning through her now. Worth wasn't begged for, it was claimed. As the car rolled up to their squat Compton house, Sasha's chest swelled with something raw, unshakable. She wasn't just Snoop Dogg's kid anymore, not just the chief's daughter riding his coattails. She was Sasha Broadus, the girl who'd faced down a king and walked away taller. Trent could sulk, plot, rage all he wanted. His grip was gone, and Compton High knew it. Calvin killed the engine, glancing at her with a glint of pride. "You good?" She nodded, slow, certain. "Yeah, I get it now." He smirked again, stepping out. "Damn right you do." Sasha followed, the night closing in, her shadow stretching long and bold across the pavement. She'd found her ground, and no one, not Trent, not anyone, could shake it. Sneered. But it wasn't a threat now. It was a warning of what happened when you fell. By fifth period, she saw him again, alone in the hall, his head ducked low, his steps heavy. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, his glare a furnace of rage and shame, hers steady, unflinching. He looked away first, a crack in his armor she'd never seen before. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She didn't have to. The power had flipped, and it wasn't loud. It was quiet, heavy, final. As the day bled into dusk, Sasha lingered by the school's rusted gates, the Compton skyline smoldering red. The buzz of the building faded behind her, but the weight of what she'd done didn't lift. It sank deeper, rooting her to the pavement. She wasn't the new girl anymore, not the outsider swallowing insults to survive. Trent had built his throne on fear, but she'd burned it down with nothing but her spine. The respect wasn't handed to her, it was carved out, claimed in the silence after the storm. She adjusted her backpack, the straps biting into her shoulders, and stepped into the fading light. Trent's reign was dead, and Sasha Broadus was the one who'd buried it. The Compton High parking lot simmered under the dying sun as Sasha Broadus climbed into Calvin's squad car, the door slamming shut like a gavel on Trent Dawson's reign. The engine growled to life, but the weight of the day clung to her, heavy and electric. She'd walked out of that school a different girl, shoulders squared, eyes sharp, no longer the shadow dodging Trent's venom. Calvin glanced at her, his police chief's badge catching the last rays, a smirk tugging at his lips. "How was school?" he asked, voice low, knowing. Sasha hesitated, then let a rare smile crack through the tension. "Not bad," he chuckled, pulling onto the cracked streets, the city's pulse thumping around them. "Told you, kid. Punks like Trent only got juice if you let him have it." The words landed hard, a truth she'd felt in her bones but hadn't named until now. The ride home was quiet, the kind of silence that buzzed with unspoken fire. Sasha stared out the window, Compton's neon and grit blurring past, her mind replaying the day, Trent's fall, the nods in the hall, the way her voice had steadied when she faced him down. Calvin broke the stillness, his tone shifting, serious now. "I didn't step in because I thought you were weak." She turned, frowning. "What?" He kept his eyes on the road,